Welcome to tonight's League of Professional Theater Women's Professional Seminar, How to Crowdfund Like a Queen with Melissa Center. My name is Illana Stein, and I have a blurred background. I'm wearing a pink long sleeve shirt with flowers, and I have curly brown hair. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm zooming to you from New York. I'm a board member with the League of Professional Theater Women and a co-producer and moderator for tonight's program. I also wanted to say happy Eclipse Day to everyone. I went to a park today to watch it, and it was nice to be in community with neighbors, staring at something besides our computer screens. So as a fun icebreaker, if you did watch the eclipse, let us know in the chat where you watched it and how was your experience. Now tonight, it's nice to be in community with you all. A reminder that tonight's program is being recorded, and we have turned on closed captioning. We have also added giving visual descriptions into our practice. So if you do come on screen later, we ask that you take a brief moment to describe yourself. There will be a few examples of how to do that throughout the evening. For those new to the League of Professional Theater Women is a membership organization championing women in theater and advocating for increased equity and access for all theater women. Our programs and initiatives create community, cultivate leadership, and increase opportunities and recognition for women working in theater. If you're interested in learning further about the League or about membership, please visit the link to our website, and we will put that in the chat. One of the League's professional programs is our professional seminars, where experienced guest panelists lead seminars for members and guests focusing on a wide range of topics relevant to having a successful theater career through a moderated Q&A. This is one of the League's programs where we invite League members, welcome and hello, and our non-League members, hello and welcome as well, to the same program so that we can introduce you to each other and you can see in the League what we do. The last professional seminar, Working with Disability, Part 2, was moderated by Gwen McDonald last February. You can still see a recording of that program on our website for a limited time. We will also put that in the chat and also how you can learn about future programming. If you need technical assistance tonight, please direct message the wonderful Jessica Delbeni, our wonderful stage manager who is on standby to assist you. Jessica, please say hello in the chat. As I said, we'll keep the chat open, but if that distracts you, you can turn the chat off. At the very end of Melissa's presentation, we'll welcome you all back on screen so we can gather as a community and ask questions. And that brings us to right now. Thank you to the League and the LPTW Professional Seminar Committee and joining me in producing tonight's program. And now I'd like to introduce you to our guest and League of Professional Theater Women board and our League of Professional Theater Women member, Melissa Center. Welcome, Melissa.
Thank you. Thank you. And thanks for those of you who joined. It's really wonderful to see some familiar faces and just so many people who are interested in the topic at hand.
Fantastic. Let me introduce them to you, Melissa. So Melissa Center is an actress, award-winning filmmaker known for visceral women's stories and the Crowdfunding Queen, who has helped creatives raise over $1 million for their passion projects. Through her new initiatives, she supports female storytellers, especially Jewish women and our allies, raising funds on our own terms in order to share our stories with the world because our voices matter and need to be heard. Hear, hear.
Amen.
Amen. So Melissa, we'd love to learn a little bit about you before we dive right into your presentation.
Yeah.
Have you always been involved in theater? Will you share a little bit with us about your background?
Absolutely. Before I dive in, should I describe myself as well?
Absolutely, please do.
So if you are, this is helpful for you. Hi, I'm Melissa, and I am in front of a blurred background as well. I have an orange shirt. We're kind of orange and pink today in our themes, with usually curly but pulled back brown hair. So back to the question. Can you prompt me again, please?
Yes. So tell us about your background in theater.
Yeah. In theater. So I grew up in the Chicago area, and was a part of a family who was just loved the arts. And from a very young age, I was enchanted by all things acting and singing and movies and movie musicals and stage, and honestly, theater is what was accessible to me, right, as a performer. So I grew up going to Chicago theater, and from a very, very young age, just wanted to be an actor. And so I started doing a lot of musical theater because that was, again, what was really done in my community and accessible to me. And I knew that that's what I wanted to do with my life. Went to Northwestern for theater and musical theater. And then after I graduated Northwestern, came out to New York first, and was in the throes of musical performing and auditioning and working, and also finding myself frustrated with, I think, feeling like I was put in a bit of a box as a performer. I'm very petite and young looking, and so I felt like I was really pigeonholed into certain roles or even certain opportunities, and I really, really felt I had more to offer, actually. And in addition to my love for theater, I also really did wanted to be working in TV and film. I found that everyone who I respected on screen had their foundations in the theater. And I was so proud to like have that. And so I wanted to bridge that gap. So this kind of led me to starting to create my own work, and starting to crowdfund my own work. I guess this is going to foray into your second question, actually.
I know, what a surprise.
So let's put a pin on this.
Yeah.
But no, I think that answers the theater. I think that answers the theater question of like,
Yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
origin story there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as you alluded to, so you identify mostly as an actress.
Yeah.
So how did you make this pivot to crowdfunding and found this new endeavor and passion for yourself?
Yeah, great. So as I was describing, I was feeling like there was more that I could offer in terms of myself as an artist and just like in general as a human. I've always been very scrappy and entrepreneurial, like how my mind works. And so at a certain point, I felt like I was banging my head against the wall, and I decided I needed to create some sort of calling card for myself as an actor. And I was working with a mentor at the time here in New York, my acting teacher and mentor is the late Wynn Hanman. And he had cast me in a theater version of The Giver, a book by Lois Lowry. This was an adaptation of that novel for his Literature to Life program. So it was a solo adaptation of that. And so in my work with him, originating that show and kind of learning the template of all this like character work, I thought there was something that I could do in this realm, and I came across on Craigslist the missed connection section, if you remember this. And I was really, really enchanted by it, all these people's stories, and it felt like so New York and so strange and kind of quirky and magical. And so I decided to take specific postings and turn it into an opportunity to create character. I was like already doing this, but then film them. This was when web series were like just starting to be a thing. So I was like, oh, this is great because I can put together something and kind of show who I am as a character actor, and just have a calling card for myself so I can continue to build my reputation as an actor, and then maybe foray into doing some TV film work as well. And so this was my very first project that I like self-produced, and I started by borrowing things, and my then partner was a DP, and so he was helping me shoot. But I was really wanting to have a little bit more agency, so I wasn't reliant on like borrowing cameras, and I wanted to take a step forward with how I was putting this together, how I was producing this. So I launched a Kickstarter, and at that time, I again, didn't know what I was doing, but I was very, very invested in my and the project's success. And I just was so passionate about it. So I was like, well, I'm committed to this. I'm doing it. Here we go. And this was a crowdfunding campaign for $8,000, which at that time for me felt really, really scary and like a lot of money. And I just kind of put my whole self into it. And I was, asking whoever would support me to support me. And I was working at a restaurant at the time. And I would even strike up conversation with some of my like customers and like slip in that I was doing this thing, and some generously supported me. And it was like simultaneously scary and horrifying, but ultimately I made my goal. And from there I was able to really expand how I was telling the story of what I was doing. So it was extremely empowering. So this was very pivotal for me because I was like, oh, cool. I just felt so much more agency over myself, my career. I was invited to be a part of the original digital caucus through the Writers Guild here, which also felt like an additional kind of, I know we don't do this for approval, but it felt like a bit of an approval, right? Like, okay, I feel respected by my peers, and now I can enter rooms feeling more empowered, right? I'm not only an actor vying for jobs or like waiting for the phone to ring, right? But I'm also like really in charge of paving my own way. So that really inspired me to continue on this path. And then I moved to Los Angeles shortly thereafter and found myself in a lab of sorts, bunch of actors, a lot of former New Yorkers, very theater based. So we would get together weekly and just like put up scenes and hash it out. And it was just for our own like workout, really. And professionals I really admired and respected. And some work started to bubble out of this. So some plays. I ended up producing out of this production of 50 Words, the Weller play, with this group. And then I just had this idea. I wanted to make a film with these individuals, and I always loved ensemble stories. And I love the movie Anniversary Party with all those like great character actors. And I wanted to make something like that with these people. So I pitched this idea to a group of people about a film that I could make, a single location, super scrappy. And a bunch of people got on board. And then suddenly I was like crowdfunding again. But this time it was, I needed to raise more than $8,000. So I launched a larger campaign. And I share this whole anecdote because it was very pivotal in terms of what I learned of what never to do again. And I'll go into some of this in my presentation. But the film ended up getting made, so I ended up pulling together the funds. But I knew that the way in which I approached it was completely unsustainable. I never wanted to do it again. But then it came to my next big project, my solo show, a theater piece, coming back to my roots. And I had to raise a bunch of money again because it was supposed to premiere at Edinburgh Fringe in 2020. And, stuff got a little fakakta with that, but I ended up producing a live stream of the show and raised a bunch of money to do so. And brought on a consultant actually to help me with this process. And the campaign was launched during the pandemic. Everything was mayhem, but I really, with his guidance and support, went through with it. And the launch was for a $20,000 goal. And I ended up raising over $30,000 for the campaign. And it was actually a testament to a lot of what I learned with Justin, who I had hired to help me. And because of the success of that, then people were like, wow, I've seen lots of crowdfunding campaigns, but like what you did was amazing. How did you do that? Please help me. And so then that was a very natural next step for me to start working with clients. First in partnership with Justin, which I continue to do. And now coming into this year, I've been expanding how I've been working with people and crafting a program that's really tailored for what I feel like is a lot of the needs that us women have. And then also I have a special mission to help amplify Jewish women's voices. So I have like a kind of parallel missions to support women and also Jewish women's stories in the world. So that's a long story.
So that validation from your peers must have
Yeah.
felt really nice. What
Yeah.
advice do you wish you had at the time that you did that first campaign?
Great. So I think I'll share some of what I learned as I go through the presentation actually, but the biggest misconception that I think I fell into was thinking if I modeled my campaign after other successful campaigns that are similar to mine that I see researched, then that's what I need to do to like put together a successful campaign. And I just was sorely mistaken. So yeah, I'll get into some of those specifics as we go through some of the slides, but
Yeah, that's fascinating.
yeah.
And one more question.
Yeah.
Why are you called the Crowdfunding Queen? Did you
Ah,
give yourself that, or did someone tell
I
you that
know.
along the way?
Um, so it was inspired a bit by my colleague Justin, who has branded himself the Kickstarter guy. So I was like working as his main coach. And I thought, as I'm developing my own branding or whatever, I was like, I kind of need a name too, right? And so I actually can't remember if this is something I came up with or someone said that was a good idea for me. But it's got ring, and I've been in an incubator, actually, like a mastermind, a women's mastermind group for PR and marketing, and so that container has helped me also like really get clear on how to communicate what I'm doing out in the world, and it's just kind of fun. So it's a little bit self-proclaimed, but then I think because my colleagues have fun with it, then I just ran with it. Yeah.
It's nice to be a queen.
It's like we gotta step into our own sense of power, and like there's something I think the words that we use really have a resonance. And so it's kind of, you speak what you want into the world too. And we know as writers and theater makers, it's like it starts with our imagination and we put it into words, and then it comes form into the world. And so yeah, I'm like, yeah, I want to step into like feeling like a queen, there's an
Yeah,
abundance kind of energy to that.
it is certainly empowering for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, I know everyone is eager to hear from you. There's so many people here. We all self-produce our own projects. It's terrifying when it's that time, and no matter if it's Kickstarter or what it is that you have to crowdfund. So we'd love to hear from you. So I'm gonna turn the meeting over to you.
Awesome. So I'm just going to go over like 3 key fundamentals that I find really help people wrap their heads around this process. Because again, I find there are so many misconceptions. And if anyone has questions along the way or comments, like feel free to put that into the chat. And I know afterwards there will be an opportunity for me to answer specific questions. So let me just figure out what I'm doing here. Yeah. Sometimes I'm not the best at the tech, but this is, nope. There we go. Okay. Okay. So 3 keys to crowdfund like a queen. So why up to 60% of campaigns fail on Kickstarter? I think this connects to a lot of the traps that, as I expressed, I fell into with that raise for my feature film. The thought that all I have to do is like build out a really cool campaign page, or if I see other campaigns that are the similar goals, similar tone, I just have to kind of model the perks, right? The perk amounts that they choose, and model the information on the page, and even model how they do the pitch video. And that will mean that I'm successful. Or alternatively, some people are like, I have this great pitch video or this great trailer for my project. And they think that that somehow is going to generate the support without really doing all the other work. I'm trying to think of, yeah, here, I wrote them. So if I model after my page after a successful campaign, I'll reach my goal. Or some people are just purely reliant on social media, right? I'll share the F out of my campaign on social and expect people will contribute. And yes, it is very important to share on social media so that people know what's going on, but that is not enough. I think a lot of people are afraid to truly ask for what they need. And so sometimes it feels safer to just like, I'll put it on social and then people can click if they want. And so there's a faulty mindset in that, and a faulty premise that I like to dispel when I'm working with my clients. And lastly, yeah, if I build it, they will come, right? Well, yeah, you can put together a great page and put all your work into beautiful images and trailer and even beautiful social media, but that's not enough. I'll share briefly. In the several years that I've been working with clients, again, as you heard from my bio, I've helped people raise a collectively, at this point, over $1 million. And my success rate is like about 98%. I've only had one client fail. And that is because despite my best efforts in training them or providing them with the fundamentals that they needed, and I'll get into what those are in a second, her team, the people around her who were a part of this project, firstly made an assumption that because they had interest from a couple of production companies that somehow the people that were expressing interest would fund their film. But in the crowdfunding realm, they spent so much time and energy on just making all of the images beautiful and shooting a very clean, beautiful pitch video, and just were reliant on that to do the work for them. They weren't really invested in the steps that you need to do to have success. They were really reliant on just the images to do the work for them, and that's why they failed. So instead of having all those assumptions, you need to have a plan. Crowdfunding is so much about marketing. Again, I think a lot of people think having a trailer, even sometimes having someone with a little bit of cachet, like, oh, if I have an influencer share this out, that somehow the funds will magically appear. And unfortunately, because people are so inundated with social media, everything moves so fast, people are distractible. You need a specific plan of communication, not only visual marketing, right, on social, but also an outreach plan that is consistent, where you're reminding people that this is happening, where you are corralling people into the moment. People need to be directly asked, and usually multiple times during the course of the campaign for you to really achieve your goal. So what does a plan even mean? What does that look like? You must have a team, and I'll get to this in a second. I think of marketing in like 3 different areas. One is understanding, and let me go back to the slide first if I can. Yeah. First, understanding that, let's say your goal amount is $20,000. So you want to understand the numbers of it. So if your goal is $20,000, an average contribution in the crowdfunding space tends to be about $50. That's like a backer average. So some people might give you 10, some people might give you 25, some people might give you 300. So in this realm, a basic backer average is $50,000. So if you're looking to raise 20, that means that 400 individuals have to give you $50. So that's very important to understand, because anytime you share out information to a community, you blast out information, only a fraction of those people are even going to see it. Only a fraction of those people are even going to click and visit your page. And a fraction of those people are going to contribute, take action and contribute. In the crowdfunding space, I think the rate is about 10% of the people who would visit your page would contribute. So with that, that means that you need to reach 4,000 people over the course of your campaign, grab them, invite them to your page for those numbers to clock. So understanding the scope is very helpful. And then understanding that, again, this is a marketing plan. You need to know how to market yourself. And that is a combination of how you're appearing out in the world on social, but how you're messaging yourself, right? How you're crafting your asks. There's a way to step into your sense of empowerment and alignment and strength when you're asking for support for your projects, rather than what a lot of us tend to do is like, I don't want to bother people, or I'm really kind of scared to ask inside, so I'm going to like minimize my ask or apologize for myself. Or I've seen examples of people be like, if you skip Starbucks this week, you can throw that now $10 into my campaign. That's not how we want to approach it. We want to be queens, right? We want to step into this with a sense of strength, empowerment, abundance. And so we're going to ask from that energy, and we're going to show up fully, and we're going to ask for exactly what we need and expect that our generous community will show up and rise to the occasion. So understanding how to message yourself, and then knowing that, again, you need to be messaging yourself consistently enough during a 30-day campaign so that people are not only aware that this is happening, but involved and then excited to contribute. Okay. Because of the reach that you need to arrive at, let's say, a $20,000 goal, you might not have 4,000 people that you can reach out to, right? So you need some sort of amplification system to get to your personal lists, your personal community, so that you can get to the number of people necessary who would then yield that amount. Another misconception about crowdfunding is that it's transactional, and it would equate to marketing the actual movie or theater project. We're talking theater. Obviously, we're a League of Professional Theater Women, but similar idea, right? There's a way to market an actual show to get people to come to see it. That is a different exercise than marketing a crowdfunding campaign, because when we're marketing a crowdfunding campaign, what we're doing is asking people to become our patrons, which takes another level of personal trust and relationship. Then someone can just say, ooh, that show looks cool. I want to pay for a ticket to see it. That's a different ask. So this is a very community building, organic grassroots exercise. So you must have a team around you if you want to start raising in the like 15, 20K realm plus. If you do any research on platforms like Seed and Spark, for example, I remember when they were first coming out, and they're generally very supportive of the art creative community. They provide a lot of educational tools for people so that, we can be set up for success. And I remember when they were first coming out, they were like, one of the rules of crowdfunding, thou shalt not crowdfund alone. And this is something that I learned kind of the hard way with my film campaign, because it was really mainly all on my shoulders. I had the support of my co-writer and the director in terms of helping do some outreach or really thanking people as contributions were coming in. He was very involved. But really the crux of the raise felt solely on my shoulders. And that was a very, very heavy lift. And so I learned that when you have team around you, not only is it more fun, becomes like a collective exercise, but it allows you to raise more money than you would be able to do on your own. And finally, the real key factor here, number 3, is preparation. And another pitfall that I see is a lot of people reach out to me and say, I'm launching in 2 weeks, or I want to launch next month, and I'm looking to raise $50,000. And more often than not, they just have no concept of what needs to go into this campaign. They think that, you know, again, oh, I already shot the trailer or the pitch video, and I have these cool things and these cool perk ideas, and they think that that's enough. And unfortunately, there's just no plan for communications, and it's probably 15% of the work should go into the page, which must be beautiful, right? Which must tell the story. And there are specific ways that you want to set up perks and craft the pitch video to really elicit a response, but you still have to rally people around and bring them there. And that is the majority of the work. So usually when I'm working with someone, and this is, you know, what I learned myself, you have to give yourself a minimum of 90 days of prep before you launch, because it takes time to plant those seeds on social media and build out an audience and get in people's consciousness, so that by the time you launch, that work will be working for you. It takes time to prepare your communications, to organize your contact lists, to bring in team, right? So that you're not doing this alone. I just, as an anecdote, had a campaign I was coaching, and this is a show that's going to be off Broadway soon. And his goal was $40,000, and he ended up raising about 60, did phenomenally well. And we had a little postmortem after the campaign closed, just so I could get a sense of, like, you know, what he felt went well, if there was anything that he felt could have gone better with my working relationship with him, and so on and so forth. And really, he was like, the only thing is those 90 days, like, minimum. He said, if I were to do it again, I would have given myself more time. And, you know, usually I agree. Some people set those deadlines and they feel like they really, really have to stick to that. I always encourage people, like, to give yourself grace, to give yourself breathing room. Better you feel fully prepared than squeezed and rushed, because usually the deadlines that we're setting are you know, they're kind of arbitrary. So yeah, if you're thinking about a campaign, make sure you give yourself plenty of time to prepare. In like film world, I always view it as like a pre-production. And in theater worlds, you know, there are conversations that we have with our designers, and, you know, obviously there's a whole rehearsal process before we put on the show. This comes first. And even with some clients now who are so eager to get their project made, you have to remember that you can't have the project without the money. And so best put the fundamentals in place and prepare and get your ducks in a row, so that you can have a successful launch and not stress, so that you have the funds to do the thing. So those are the 3 key things. This is just a little final slide that we can get to how to reach out to me after I answer some questions. But now I'm back in the chat. I hope that was clear and helpful.
Yeah, thank you, Melissa. That was extremely helpful, going through your step-by-step resources for us, how to crowdfund. I was taking notes. You have some follow-up, so if you'll indulge me, I have some questions for you.
Please.
So let me just let somebody in. So you said messaging yourself during a 30-day campaign. How often do you suggest putting your messages out there?
So there's a whole like process that I have my clients go through, and that is a combination of like email marketing and individual follow-ups. And so I'll say over the course of a campaign, you're going to be doing like probably close to 10 email blasts to lists. And then you're going to be reaching out to, people in various spaces, like at least 20 people a day during a campaign. Yeah. To give you a sense.
Mm-hmm. You talked about patrons and building that personal trust. Can you share some examples of how you build that with your own community?
Great. Some of that is really just how we show up in our day-to-day life, right? And actually social media I find very helpful for that. So if you're sharing your progress, if you're sharing your heart, then the people in our community are paying attention. You'd be surprised. So I'll give you two anecdotes. I view like my Facebook and all of that mainly for a lot for business, right? So I'm always sharing things about my career stuff, and personal life, personal feelings. But even with my feature film, the one where I did a messed up crowdfund for, the reason why I ended up raising the money was because I actually decided to crowdfund. And on the last day, I sent a Facebook message to someone who I'd met literally once at this event in Los Angeles, who lived in Arizona. And he was like, call me, I think I have what you need. And I was like, okay. And so I called him and he's like, what are you doing? What are you doing this crowdfunding thing for? Like, how much do you need? I can give you the money. And in fact, I'm going to be in Beverly Hills in 3 days. Do you want to meet up? And so I was like, sure. Like, are you for real? And we met and he was like, the first time we met, I knew you were poised for success. And, we had a conversation and he ended up being like the angel investor for my film and the executive producer, and, was the reason why it was able to get made. And so I shared that because our impressions, like, they matter, and we never know who we, make that kind of impression with. So that was one example of me just like kind of showing up consistently out in the world and like being confident, being kind, introducing myself to people. And, then when the opportunity presents itself, or I shared what I was doing, and it happened that in this moment in time, this person, wanted to get into movies and like had been impressed with how I handled myself in other regards. And so wanted to support this. And then when it came time for my more recent personal campaign, the one for my solo show, I needed to find someone who could fulfill a certain amount of money to kind of leverage for the campaign. And you're always like, who's it going to be? And actually the first person who was the angel investor for my feature film, I approached him first because I was like, well, he contributed a lot, but theater isn't his thing, right? He's like, I don't get theater. I'm a movie person. And I was like, what's wrong with you? But that was fine. Like, I get it. He doesn't really resonate with theater, so that wasn't his thing. But someone else who, again, sees how I show up, sees how I post. This is a business person, not in the arts. Sees how I show up on like LinkedIn and certain things, how I put myself out there. Gave me with like not a blink. You know, he's like, what do you need? Here, take my credit card so you can put it in because I'm so busy. So I think it's always being authentic and remembering that even if we do little actions over the course of time, if it's coming from the right spirit and you know, yeah, I mean, that's it. If it's always like with a sense of generosity or if you're being authentic, then the people, you know, people take note.
Wow, that's an incredible story.
Yeah.
So besides an angel investor, how do you find your team that's going to support you?
Yeah. That's like the number one most scary friction point for everybody who begins this process. And any person who's going to be contributing, whether that is in an angel investor capacity or on our team, or even backing it or sharing it on social media, we don't know, right? We don't know who's going to say yes to us. And so it's always a matter of being firmly aligned in this, the story that you're trying to tell, really understanding like the why of it, because anytime we put art into the world, yeah, it's ours and it's for us, but it's really so much larger than that. And so people resonate with us when we are firmly connected to that why. And asking for what you need. And some people, you know, have the capacity to help in the form of team, and some people that's like not their thing, and that's okay. I think with any part of this process, it's not making assumptions about anybody, right? It's really like being courageous to just say like, this is what I'm doing. You know, this is what I need. Can you help me? And being vulnerable enough to kind of just let that be and seeing then how they can meet you. Yeah.
I'm going back to timeline for a second. So 90 days to prepare, but how soon out do you market your film or theater project or whatever else you're raising funds for?
So in those 90 days, part of what that is bringing team together. Part of what that is planting seeds on social media. So you have, you know, like a kind of robust enough container where people will see what's going on. If you are trying to, you know, raise a significant amount, the more helpful to give yourself more time, you know. 90 days tends to be a bit like of a sweet spot if you're wanting to just kind of like get that engine rolling, you know, and like do the work. But yeah, if you depending on your life and schedule and whatnot, like if you need more time to put those elements together, you give yourself more time. And the more, I guess, yeah, sorry, I'm thinking about this out loud. It's like you need to create like a kind of a little bit of a funnel, like a little bit of an energy to be like, this isn't just a kind of an evergreen thing that's there's no sense of urgency around.
So urgency helps build the
Yeah,
momentum.
I think so.
Yeah, I've also seen other
Yeah.
campaigns like they start just like sharing interesting things that are related to their campaign, but not
Yeah.
necessarily their campaign. Do you feel like
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
a way to jumpstart the project?
Yeah. So you don't want to say that before launch, you really don't want to say I'm crowdfunding because you don't want to fatigue your audience. It's more about planting seeds
Mm.
and like starting to pique curiosity. right? And so there are all sorts of ways that you can do that. There are best practices for social. Some of that, is what I discuss with clients. But I found, as an example, like leading up to the initial campaign for my solo show, Marrying Jake Gyllenhaal, I was starting to do like kind of silly videos around it. And it's a catchy subject anyways, but like I was starting to do these like little things, planting seeds for the project. And people are like, is she crazy? Or like, what is going on here? And then by the time when I launched, I remember and how successful it was. I remember my friend Alyssa was like, see, this whole time you've been planting these seeds and look how it sprouted, right? She can kind of track. She's like, I see what you've been doing this whole time. But until I like launched and made it official, you shouldn't have really known what I was up to.
We have a question in the chat about kind of seeds. You want to give us a few examples?
Yeah, so I'll answer the seeds and then I'll answer Valerie's question. So what kind of seeds? So in the case of my show, because I think it probably helps to give specific examples. So I have a solo show called Marrying Jake Gyllenhaal. Spoiler alert, plug, it's happening. Not spoiler alert, plug.
It's happening soon. Tell us.
It's finally the first live showing of this is going to be next month, May 11th at Caveat. There are going to be 4 different performances. But originally, as I mentioned in my intro, it was supposed to debut at Edinburgh Fringe 2020. I was living in Los Angeles at the time. That happened. Had to pivot. So instead I raised money for a live stream production. And leading up to the event, again, this is a kind of silly, not silly, well, I guess silly premise. So the solo show is called Marrying Jake Gyllenhaal, and it's about my mom literally was obsessed and thought that we were supposed to get together. And he's my beshert and we should get married. And so I decided that I was really going to buy into this idea, right? And not obsessively stalk him, but but my little videos that I would make would be, in reference to something that I learned about him, or, oh my God, run-ins that I would have had, or 1 degree of separation, things like this that were actually happening in my life and kind of a part of the show. And so I would make these little anecdotes and kind of make the audience think that I actually wanted to pursue this person, right? And maybe I'm supposed to marry Jake Gyllenhaal. And it was part of the fun of the promo. And also this is a kind of intrinsic question in my show. And so because it's so are you for real? Did that thing really happen? Right? Do you really want to marry this, movie star? People were really starting to get a kick out of it. And then people would send me things about him that they would see, or, they were kind of getting hip to what I was doing. So that's what I mean by seeds. It's kind of what is your show about? And thematically, are there conversations you can be having with your community, through the tool of social media, or at least start to ask questions of them, right?
So for you, the seeds are positive, fun, anecdotal stories. That could be a seed.
Yeah, that could be a seed. I think it's always with social, any of this, it's all an experiment, really, right? The question that you ask yourself is, how can I have a conversation with my community around this? What content could I produce, let's say, that might involve them, or what might they want to know about, or how can I connect more personally the themes of my story to people's needs? And that might help dictate some of your content.
Yeah. And it sounds like it's also interactive. You want feedback on the spot, so more engaging.
Exactly. You want people to engage, you know, be involved in the whole story. Crowdfunding is about the money, but it's so much more about that. It's so much more about audience building and community building. So the more that you can involve your community in the like entire process, the better.
Mhm.
And yeah, social media algorithms anyways, they kind of depend on us engaging. And so you know, you want to think about, well, what can I put out there that is going to elicit some sort of response? Not in a manipulative way, but like, you know, how do I help people connect to this?
Yeah. And in the chat, someone said connecting themes to people's needs is feeling represented and seen at best. That's a great response. Do you think people still give incentives for their campaigns? Do you still recommend that? Or what's some great incentives that you've seen that are more unusual than the typical ones that we may see?
Well, I'll share a couple that I used. So incentives are very important because I feel like they help tell the story of your thing and then they connect people more deeply to the experience. So for example, in my show, there's some music in my show and like I like rap, which is ridiculous, but it's kind of make fun of myself in that way. And so one of the perks that I gave was like, I'm going to do a personalized rap for you. And it's like, you know, so silly, but people like that. And then another aspect in my show is I end up writing this like kind of love letter to Jake Gyllenhaal. And so one of the perks that I did was like, I will write you a love letter. And or if you want to give a love letter to someone in your life, I will write one for you that you can give to them. And people took me up on that, and I think they really appreciated it. So the more that you can connect it to your show and like make it personal, that's what I like to help people brainstorm with.
Thank you. I'm going to ask you a few more questions and then we're going to open it up to the audience because I do want to hear the answer to Valerie's question as well.
Yeah.
But before we get there, so thank you for that success story that you shared. Do you think there's a common denominator that makes a campaign successful when you are working with a client? Is there something from the get that you're like, oh, that's a green flag. I have a feeling this is going to go very well for you.
Yeah. So I think it's two things. I think it's like alignment, like complete commitment, right? Like this is happening and I might not know what I'm doing and I'm scared, but like, let's do this. That is a real green flag for me. And then, and I guess I kind of like did two flags in one. Yeah. Even if people have like reservations about, or like tenderness around asking, as long as they're coming into it being like, you know, like I'm ready. I think that's a thing. When I have conversations with people, sometimes consults, and they're either like expressing a lot of resistance around like just like fees, for example. I know that they're not going to be able to raise the money. Because there's a certain aspect of kind of leap and the net will appear to this that you have to be willing to accept, and like a certain sense of like trust that I know that if I do the steps, then the support will come. Again, even if there's like some doubt and uncertainty, which is part of being a human, coming into that conversation with me with like a commitment is, I feel like then what I feel good about with a person.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It kind of
Or,
goes.
you know, even if someone, yeah, even if it's like there is tenderness, because a lot of the times when I have like my like breakthrough sessions is what I call them, there, you know, people will share a lot of vulnerability around asking for help, around, you know, noise around asking for money. And that's partly what I help people with in the like very preparational phases. But if you're open-hearted enough to be like, I wanna do this, I have this kind of, I'm used to this kind of way of thinking, and I know that I see I see my potential at the other end of it, then yeah, that's where I find like we're gonna be fine.
So it also kind of relates back to the story of calling yourself queen,
Yeah.
because you did it before you had those clients. And now people refer to you as a crowdfunding queen. If you build it, it will come. Um,
Yeah.
so you do have to practice what you preach. You have to tell people, I like that, to jump without a net. Because what I started with is crowdfunding can be terrifying. And as artists, it feels like we're like begging people to pay us for jobs that we're already doing.
Yeah.
Um, but it's giving us a new frame of how to think about the
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. If we're coming into this with that, like, I don't want to beg people for money, or like, I don't want to bother people, you're
yeah.
dead in the, it's not, it's a different exercise. It's obviously like, yes, we need the money, but like, we can think about this as a community building activity and an audience building activity. And like, this is what I'm doing. Also, like, this is what I'm doing wholeheartedly. This is what I need. And just giving people the opportunity to step in the way that they can, whether that is money, whether that, again, I said this, but it bears repeating, whether that is money, whether that is helping you spread the word, whether that is being on your team and helping like do the asking. That's kind of none of our business, right? Everyone's a grown up, everyone's an adult. They can say yes or no, but it's like, we must show up and be like, this is happening. Call it in. Yeah.
Okay, my last question, and then we'll open up to the room. This is a hard one because I know you don't work for any of these companies, but how do you decide which is the best platform? Patreon, Kickstarter, Seed and Spark?
Mhm.
Do we directly just look at what percentages they take out, or do you feel like each has its own personality? How do you find what's right for you?
Yeah, yeah. I think it's a variety of factors. They each have a different model. What I find is you do want to have like a finite start and finish. Excuse me, you're best served when there is some sort of sense of urgency that you need to call people into the moment, and you're best served when there's some sort of risk factor involved, to be honest. Especially for us storytellers. I think if you're like raising funds for product, you can get away with certain platforms over others, but it's really easy, I think, to let ourselves off the hook if you have nothing to kind of lose. That makes sense. So for example, putting up a GoFundMe for a film or theater project, not my favorite. First of all, we're not a charity. And also the way that the platform is structured doesn't offer the same experience for what we're trying to do for storytelling as some of the others. There's no like finite end period. And it's kind of like you would keep whatever you raise in there, right? So it's hard for us to be like, we must raise X by X date, when it's kind of like, whatever, And so Indiegogo is a similar model to that, right? In that whatever you raise, you'll keep. They have some other really supportive elements to their platform, but it can be tricky for filmmakers to like reach their full goal because of that factor. Kickstarter, you have to raise your whole goal to get your money. So if you don't hit 100%, you get nothing. So some people, that can be like really terrifying and like paralyzing, right? We don't want that. But if it's like energizing to you to be like, I got to get my shit together, right? Having that risk factor can really mobilize you, your team, and then your community to make sure you reach that goal by the end. Seed and Spark is a little bit of a hybrid in that you have to hit 80% of your goal in order to keep your funds. Once you do, you're considered greenlit, which means the money goes into your bank. And then you do have to close that gap. But usually if you get to that 80%, then you're most likely to get to 100 and go into stretch goals if you work with me. Or if you like, even follow a lot of their best practices.
Is that just film, Seed and Spark?
No,
Or
actually,
theater
yeah, it's storytelling. they I think cater mostly to films, or that's their like foundation, but I ran my solo show project on there, and actually quite a few of the theater pieces that I've coached, I've gone on Seed and Spark with, and it's great. Another kind of pro to Seed and Spark versus Kickstarter is Kickstarter still takes a platform fee on top of the credit card processing fee. Seed and Spark doesn't do that anymore. It's just the credit card processing fee, so you're having to pay out less. But again, sometimes Kickstarter is great because the name recognition, some people like really rally behind that, their model. So I typically, I'm supportive of whatever you want at the end of the day, the people who I work with. But I'll typically nudge people towards either a Kickstarter or Seed and Spark in this moment in time. That may change.
Thank you. So helpful. And thanks for getting into the specifics with us. So now we're going to open up the Zoom room to everybody. So feel free to come on screen. You can raise your hand physically or virtually, and I'll call on you. Valerie, David, I'd love to call on you first. If you don't want to come on screen, I can ask the question for you. Anyone else is welcome to come on screen. You'll unmute yourself to ask the question, and we do ask you to self-describe yourself before you ask your question. All right. Hi, Valerie.
Hi. Hi. Thank you so much for this. I just love my cuckoo hair. I hope everyone has a good laugh. So hello, everyone.
Fabulous.
Thank you. Do you recommend
Before, do you mind self-describing yourself?
Oh, sure. I am she, her, and I am a solo show performer and musical theater and actor, playwright.
And visual
And
description as well.
oh, visual, sorry. I have curly hair that's up in a clip. I have glasses on my head, glasses on my face, to help my eyes, have a computer eclipse. I'm wearing a poncho that's blue and green, and I'm wearing pink shoe Barbie earrings. So, so thank you so much for this. Uh, and the other thing is, when you talked about reservations that people had and fees, I wasn't sure what you meant by that, that what your instincts were about aligning people that had reservations like that. And the other was to, do you recommend partnering with the fiscal sponsor so the donors get a tax break as an incentive for them to want to donate to get that tax deduction? Thank you.
Yeah, so to answer your first question, I find that, well, first of all, like, obviously to work with me, I am paid, right? And so, some people, that's understandable. And either you can, accept what like my rate, for example, or not, that's cool. But, I find that historically, I've had, and even in partnership with the other program, when people start to kind of like try to find a workaround, or like kind of a payment plan outside of what I already offer, or these kinds of things, that's just not going to work. And beyond like, because I work with people and try to be accessible in a couple of ways, but like not even having anything to do with me personally. It's just what I see when people are talking to me like that is a lot of kind of lack mentality, right? And that's going to be like a big hurdle for them to get over, to just do the work. So that's what I was really speaking to, if that makes sense. And then, yeah, so coming into this experience just takes like a little bit of faith, right? It's just like, I don't know how I'm going to pull this together, but like, I believe in myself. This is that important. I'll figure it out. So that's what I mean. With the fiscal sponsorship thing. So I want to undo a little bit of a false belief around that question, if I may. So the question is, do you suggest joining a fiscal sponsor for your project so that there's an incentive for donors to get that tax break? So embedded into that question is the belief that people will contribute to me if they can get something in return. Now, in some cases, I think when you're dealing with like corporations, or like if you have a documentary, for example, and you're trying to get, you know, a handful of $20,000 contributions, trying to partner with nonprofits or things like that, then it can be smart to have a fiscal sponsor and offer that as a possibility. I find with individual contributions, it's actually not necessary, and people want to support you because they believe in you, and they don't necessarily want anything in return. Even perks half the time. I think perks can be really fun for people, but they're not giving you money because they want to get something, right? Most of the time, especially with storytelling projects, it's because it's like, hell yeah, you're awesome. I want to be your patron, especially if you like, you know, set yourself up a specific way and message yourself a specific way. Like, however I can support you, yes. Even in the case with the person who signed on for me in the like executive producer category, for example, you know, that was a $5,000 contribution. He asked for nothing in return. So I want you all to know that it can be helpful to have like as an option, but I don't want you to go into the process thinking that the only reason why someone would give you money is so they can get a tax break, right? That it's like transactional in that way. Also, something to keep in mind is that many fiscal sponsors do take a percentage off of all the contributions that come in if you connect it into your campaign. So you have to assess, is it really worth it for that maybe one or maybe two people to get a tax break? They're going to take a percentage of all those contributions. And people, again, for crowdfunding, the contributions are typically on average smaller, $50, $100. Someone's not giving you like $100 or $50 contribution for a tax write-off usually. So I find it's not always, I don't always recommend it.
Thank you for that. Does anybody else have a question? You want to come on screen, raise your hand. I do see one in the chat from Susan Horowitz. Hi, Susan.
Hi. Okay. I'm on screen, so I'll just grab myself. I have blonde hair. There's kind of a theater stage background in back of me, and I'm wearing a sort of orangey red blouse under a black multicolored top, and my pronouns are she, her, and I have glasses. Anything else?
That's great. You
Okay.
want to share? You can share your pronouns and then go ahead and ask your question.
Oh yeah, she, her. Yeah. With the Kickstarter, which is, I understand, you have to get 100% in seed spark if raising 80%. Let's say you've raised most of that, but you need more. Can you put in your own money to get to that minimum requirement?
So like worst case scenario, you mean, if you're like, I'm at 98% and I need that final hump?
Yeah, or whatever the percentage,
Yeah.
but you know, whatever it is, you need something to get that over that final hump.
Yeah, so you can. It's a little bit like the platforms, I think, don't necessarily encourage you to be contributing to your own campaign. So in a perfect realm, you would have someone help you with that. But sometimes in emergency, let's say, if you have the capacity to do so, then no one's going to put you in jail.
In other words, it's not forbidden, but it doesn't look good.
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct.
That sounds like what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay. My own experience with fiscal sponsorship is I do have fiscal sponsorship,
Mhm,
and I find it to be a positive thing.
mhm.
You know, it gives it a certain cachet, and I think it helps in certain ways. It's not absolutely necessary, and there's different kinds of ways of getting it. So I'll just put that out there. And let's see if there was anything else I wanted to ask. Oh, yes. Do if you're working on, as I am now in a script and I am revising Act 2, do you need to have your complete script before you start crowdfunding, or can you have something that you have your outline and that is partially in progress?
I think it depends. What are you crowdfunding exactly? The production?
Yeah, the production.
So you need to know what you're exactly crowdfunding for and be able to communicate that. And if that budget for the thing would not change, you know, so I mean, usually you would have a finished script, so you know what are the what do I actually need to earn to raise to get this made.
Mhm.
That script doesn't have to be locked necessarily, right? You can be honing prior to production. And theater's a little different than film, right? Like if you're still writing your film scripts, like there's so many variables that costs a lot of money that it would be really hard to raise for something you don't really, that's not finished. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of like you have to really know what you're raising money for.
Yeah, so in other words, you know, I mean, I can finish it. There's no problem.
Yeah.
But you know, someone told me that for a film, that it was very important to hire a publicist early,
Mhm.
even maybe before a full script or something. Do you have an opinion on that? About hiring a publicist early in the process?
They have to have something to publicize, right? So like usually if you have certain dates in mind or something that you know is coming out at a certain time, then they can work for you. You can be, you know, if you have a publicist, you can be trying to generate certain stories outside that, but those are always also stories that you could theoretically be like pitching yourself or trying to get placed yourself. So I think it's a case by case situation, depends on the story you're telling, depends on what exactly you're doing. Like, is this a
I'm
short film?
asking
Is this
because
a short film? Is it a documentary?
it seemed odd to me. It just, I didn't quite understand it when someone said it.
Yeah.
And saying, yeah, the first thing you put in place is a publicist. And that just sounded kind of odd to me. And I didn't understand it. So
Yeah.
I thought, well, maybe you'd have an opinion about it.
Yeah.
I do agree with Melissa. It is a case by case. I think it's a little out of the realm of crowdfunding, but I do think it's like one of those things that for each situation you'd figure out what's best. But you
Yeah.
want somebody else helping with marketing, and some people have a bigger reach than you yourself might have. Thank you so much, Susan. I'm gonna have some
Sure.
other
Thank
people
you.
come on and ask
Sure.
some questions.
Yeah.
So I
Thank
want to make
you.
sure, Illana, I know Emily had a question.
I did see that. You know, it's funny because you get asked all the time getting people to say yes. So Emily, if you want to come on, feel free to come on. Otherwise, I can ask the question for you. So Emily's question is, how do you nicely say no if a project doesn't align with your own personal beliefs?
Yeah. Really, really great question. So in my work that I was doing, not under my own umbrella, there were plenty of projects that came through that, you know, it was maybe someone who for an example, a couple of projects that were like very Christian themed. And that's, you know, that's not my faith. But you know, there was no reason in why I wouldn't support a project that didn't completely like line up with my own personal practice. So I want to support artists, and as long as what is coming through doesn't feel like dangerous to me, then I'm totally on board. Yeah, the politics and religion stuff is tricky. Yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's kind of like not my business. So especially in this world that we live in, you know, we as artists and storytellers, like I try to build bridges. And so if someone has like a slightly different background or even like political belief, I think that I would take on most projects. There's probably some lines for me that, again, I think it would be a case-by-case basis. Hopefully I answered that. Yeah, I think there would be a couple of situations that I wouldn't necessarily feel comfortable championing. But mostly I want to support artists and believe that stories matter.
I mean, as artists, all we have is our integrity.
Yeah.
So even if you're asked to fund something that you don't believe in, I think you just kind of have to say that I don't feel comfortable
Yeah.
funding this particular project.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, and I apologize, Illana, that's actually answering the question. If I think if you were in a personal situation and something was a no for you.
Because it's hard to say no. It is.
Yeah, forgive me,
but,
I didn't answer that very well.
well, you answered it as if you were going to take on a client,
Yeah,
which is not
yeah,
wrong. But
yeah.
but there is something that we are asked all the time to fund
Yeah,
things.
great. So I agree. I think in the case where something is just like a no for you, and that is valid completely, I think that if you're not comfortable supporting something, giving money, let's say, to a campaign where you're like, ooh, this story, I feel like for whatever reason hurts me or my family or whatever it is. I think it's totally valued for you to say, thank you. I wish you the best. I wish you well, and I'm going to take a pass on this.
Thank you. I
Yeah.
see one more question in the chat. So from Zoe. Zoe, do you want to come on screen? Everyone doesn't want to come on screen tonight. Zoe, are you there?
Yeah, I guess I will.
There's no pressure, zero pressure. Do you want to ask your question?
Yeah. Can I just ask my question without coming on the screen?
Absolutely.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hi, Melissa. Thank you for being here. I just like, as someone with zero experience crowdfunding, just like, would you mind going into a little bit more depth about what the preparation work is? Because I kind of hear that is like the majority of the work doesn't lie into your actually your stuff about the project, but like, and then like you sort of mentioned something about communication, and just would you mind going into more details?
Yeah. So I'll give you a bit like more of a kind of an overview because I don't want to get into too many details because that's what I do with my clients specifically when they hire me. But the legwork is really again planting seeds on social media, right? So that you're at least priming an audience and building an awareness around the thing that is happening. And of course, legwork needs to go into building that page and shooting a pitch video, making those decisions. But so much of it is building out a team around yourself. It is preparing, organizing your contacts in a specific way and preparing communications for those contacts, and getting those kind of ducks in a row so that once launched, you know, you can have a momentum to a campaign. And like, that's really the crux of it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
It feels like you're telling us like we're building our own toolkit. That's the preparation. We're getting all of our assets ready.
Yeah.
And then we're like ready to launch, so that, as you said, once you're already launched, you're not having to do all of that legwork. And don't launch until you are ready.
Right.
Great.
Right.
Right.
And
Thank
this
you
is
so
a
much.
good way to also tell you that Melissa does take new clients. So if you're interested in learning more from Melissa or about her practice, you can connect with her. So we'll put her information in the chat. And I think that about wraps it up. Melissa, this was so wonderful. And you've really given us a chance to become our own queens. And empower ourselves, because crowdfunding is scary. And I think just learning from someone who's been doing it for so long and kind of helps us take that step forward when it's time for each of us to raise funds for our own projects. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you, audience, for being here. Thank you, Jessica, for stage managing. If you want to reach out to LPTW, League of Professional Theater Women, you can go to our website, you can sign up for our newsletter, and that's how you can hear about our next professional seminars. So we'll put that information in the chat as well. We wish you all good luck with your crowdfunding campaigns. Happy Eclipse Day, and thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next time.